Give it up for Michael.
How are we doing? So this is new for me. Typically, like Chef Ryan, I'm back there, and I have all kinds of food and things I can sort of distract myself with so I don't have to realize that I'm in front of people. And typically, I'm drunk. And I'm not today because, one, I'm trying to cut back, and two, I have to drive back to New Orleans. So this is going to be totally different for me. So enjoy. So my name is Michael Gulotta. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I somehow found myself operating a pho restaurant. And like everyone else who has been speaking earlier, I'm Sicilian and French and Irish. So I guess I'm here to explain myself. It's the best way to put it. Why am I running a pho restaurant? And so to do that, I guess we'll go back first. So grew up in New Orleans, right? My mom always had home-cooked meals. I was lucky enough to have a stepfather who was a fire chief, which means we always cooked and always had fresh shrimp and always had fresh crabs, because if you're a fireman in South Louisiana, you're probably a shrimper or a crabber on the side, or your friend is and you get paid in shrimp. So that was always a thing. I was also lucky enough to get to go to Nicholls State University. I will give a little shout out to Top Scholarships because I got to go there for absolutely free, which was huge in my ability to learn. I was able to leave college with absolutely no debt. And so I used that to go live in Europe twice. I lived in Italy, where I didn't live in a car, but I did live above a tool shed at a restaurant on the beach in Liguria. And I didn't realize that you can, when you're in Italy and you have to wash your clothes, you can buy bars of clothes washing soap, and you wash your chef jackets in a sink next to a beach. And I was there in 2003, which was when they had that terrible heat wave. If you're a wine drinker, you would know, because all the wines from 2003 are a little screwy, because that year there was a terrible heat wave through Italy and France. And I lived in a shed with no windows. I almost died. And that was cool. I woke up just soaked in, my entire bed was soaked in sweat, and I walked downstairs and had like a terrible fever, and my chef's like, I'm gonna get you a fan. I'm like, cool, all right. That's awesome. He didn't speak any English, by the way. And so he comes back and he's like, there's no fans. The entire country's out of fans. So apparently, the entire country of Italy was out of fans that summer. So I slept on the beach every night because the restaurant had its own beach, which was really cool. So I was lucky enough to get back to New Orleans. Started working for a guy you probably know, John Besh. He's pretty well known in these parts. And hustled. And he said, well, what do you want to do now? You want to be a sous chef? I said, God, no, that sounds terrible. I want to go back to Europe. He's like, okay, I'm going to send you to Germany. So I went to Germany, and I worked in the Black Forest, and learned charcuterie and butchery and all these amazing things. Worked in this beautiful hotel in the southern Black Forest where we did everything in-house. We only served what the chef hunted. All these amazing, all the things that you dream about, or if you're a cook, all the things you dream about. Making cheese by hand, getting to learn all these, going hunting, picking wild mushrooms and wild scapes and all these amazing things. Okay, Katrina hits. I'm in Germany watching it on German CNN, which is pretty surreal. Come home, get off the plane, and Chef Besh is like, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go help my mom. He's like, cool, whatever, go check on your mom and get to work. I need people. And so I'm like, okay, so I walk in, I'm a sous chef, making basically nothing. And because there was nothing here. So start building, and I always say that my life kind of hit crazy town when I got off the plane from Germany in 2005, that was. So whatever, it was September of 2005, I got off the plane and my life just went insane. We were just working around the clock. His whole team started booming, obviously opening restaurants here and there, and my brother and I were in charge of basically training. My brother was the front house manager and I was the back of the house manager. He ran the dining room, I ran the kitchen at Restaurant August. If you've ever had to work for a very exacting person like that, someone who really knows their craft well and doesn't give an inch and doesn't allow you to give an inch, and you're 25 years old and you're suddenly running one of the top restaurant kitchens in the country while he's trying to open up other spots, it's a really harrowing experience. There's days when you want to leave. There's days when you do try to leave. There's days when you physically walk out the door and he drags you back in. But the thing that kept me going was that what he always told me was, in order for you to grow, I have to push you outside your comfort zone. And it's one of those things, and the reason I'm harping so much on this before I get into the fact that I own a pho restaurant, is that you can only learn, you can only grow, you've got to be able to stick with something. And it's a problem now because obviously now I'm in the position where I'm mentoring a lot of people. And it's one of those things where everyone wants to be like, oh, well, this is hard, I'm gonna go find something else. But cooking, and like a lot of things, is a craft. It's a craft, and you gotta stick with it, and you have to keep showing up, and you have to keep walking in the door. And I did keep walking in the door. I kept walking in the door for 6 years. I ran that restaurant. From the time that I was, 25, 26, till I was, do the math. And so I'm sitting there one day, and I noticed that, well, there was a turning moment, and there's always turning moments. I had to do I'd done party after party, these huge parties for 2,000 people at a time, and there was one where I was going into it, and I was like, I don't feel good about this one. And it was a huge failure. I screwed up. I dropped the ball. My brother and I both. And we both walked with our heads low, and we're like, hey, we really dropped the ball here. But that was sort of a watershed moment where it was like, okay, we don't want to be here anymore. And we weren't a lot. We weren't tons. I got to fly all over the country and do dinners at the Beard House and in all these amazing places. I had Aspen for the Aspen Food and Wine, Aspen for the technology conventions, all these amazing people I got to meet, but I couldn't be there anymore, and I had to leave. I just knew it. I couldn't give it because it required 120%. It required training staff. It required everything, food costing out giant banquets, renting U-Hauls, renting equipment, moving things halfway across the city, putting on giant parties for thousands of people, and while at the same time making sure that there's a 5-bean restaurant operating while you're not there because you're across town doing this. So you're training sous chefs, you're training front of house people, you're picking wines to go with certain courses for your 10-course tasting menus, and you're doing all that with a smile on your face because if you're happy, your staff's happy. And so I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it for myself. But it was a weird time. I just kind of walked, and just walking is scary. I didn't really have anything to do when I left. And so I walked out, and a friend of mine's like, hey man, let's go look at this spot. I know an old bookstore in a strip mall in Mid-City. Yeah, okay, cool. Because everyone expected me to go do fine dining. So I walk out, and we're like, okay, cool, strip mall in Mid-City. So we walk in, and it's a shithole. We're like, okay, we could do something with this. And so we're looking around, and we're like, what am I gonna do with this? Because people were expecting me to do something. And we're like, you know what? No one in the city does an industry-centric restaurant. No one does a restaurant for cooks and servers and bartenders. There is a void in the city for that. And there's a void in the Mid-City area for that. And like we were saying, you go to where there's a void. Where is there something that you don't see? And so we said, okay, well, what goes great in strip malls and cooks love to eat? This may be racist, but Vietnamese food. It's kind of the way it works. It's okay to laugh. It's all right, because I'm going to make fun of myself a lot. And I did a lot of things that people were questioning, and that's kind of why I'm here to explain myself. And so, but I had to. I mean, I'm going to be another New Orleans Sicilian going to do Sicilian food? No. I love it. I grew up eating it. I can make you a pretty mean bruschelloni, but I mean, if I serve a bruschelloni, then people are going to be like, that's not how you do it. My grandmother does a better bruschelloni than you. I don't know why you're doing that bruschelloni. So I'm like, all right. That happened. That was a fight that I got in with because, I'll get to that later, because we did open a little Italian pop-up as well. That was one of our side hustles, and I'll get into side hustles in a minute. And so we said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to open a Vietnamese-themed restaurant. Right? Yeah. And literally, I had friends who I've known for years come to me like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Right? But I opened the doors. We did it. But I think, and we get into the problem with, is it appropriation? Or is it esteem? Is it affection? Is it something that you really enjoy? Is it something that I did grow up eating? I grew up going and eating pho. I grew up going and eating really delicious spicy chicken wings. These are things that I loved, and things that I would go and do on my day off anyway. These are the things I found myself eating when I wasn't at work, and these are the things I found myself cooking when I wasn't at work. But at the time, people were just like, no, you're supposed to go do fine dining. That's what you define yourself as. That's what you're supposed to be doing. What the fuck's wrong with you? And I was like, okay, no, I'm not. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do something different, and I'm gonna go way outside my comfort zone, because I'd never opened a casual restaurant. I never worked in a casual restaurant. I'd only ever pursued fine dining restaurants ever. As soon as I was leaving one, I was looking for the next one. I was always finding one chef who was better than the one that I left. I always had a rule, which was no backwards moves, only laterals or forward moves. Every time. So here I am. I have this restaurant, and I don't know really anything about the cuisine. And here's where the difference happens. Here's where the difference between having a fusion restaurant and then what we like to call it, so what we started calling MoPho is sort of hyper-evolution. So the idea of MoPho is, what happens when a third, fourth, fifth generation Vietnamese New Orleanian cooks for their new wife who's from Lafayette? What are they going to cook for them to make them feel comfortable? What are they going to cook for them to make them excited? Is it going to be a crawfish etouffee that has lemongrass in it? Is it going to be a black bean, or is it going to be a gumbo that has fermented black bean in it? Things that bridge gaps, things that are where you find the similar parts and pieces and then you plug in the disparate parts. That's the idea. So that became the idea. But to do that, we really had to go from start to finish. So I had never really made it, so we went and bought like curry out of the pack and tried to make a curry, and that's god awful. So there's a reason when you buy curry out of a pack and you're like, this is shit, because it's shit. It's already shit in the pack. You can't change that. Like, because the chilies are way out of whack with the spices, and it's all just, it's a hot mess. And so we were like, cool, we need to buy a whole bunch of mortar and pestles. And so the rule was, all right, if a curry's made in this restaurant, it's ground by hand in a mortar and pestle. We're gonna make all of our curries by hand. That was like thing one. Thing two is just to keep going to the Hong Kong market on the West Bank and just stay in there until you get comfortable. It's really hard to do. And the thing we found out is that all those things, all those bottles are like 25 different varieties of the same fucking thing. All those shrimp, it's all shrimp paste, but those shrimp pastes, you pick your one you like, and that's the one, and if you talk to anyone, they're like, oh, my family uses this one. Cool, because I do have I have a lot of Vietnamese friends. I grew up in New Orleans. I dated a few Vietnamese girls. They fed me great food. This was awesome. And so I talked to them. I went back to these old friends, and I'm like, all right, how do I, and they're like, no, our family uses Caraval, or our family uses this one, or our family uses that one. And so that's how we started piecing it down. So there was literally, for a while, if you were the guy who had to go to, there was a order sheet with pictures next to it. You're getting this jar, because this is the good one. And if they're out of this jar, because they probably are, because things are weird there, and things don't always come back when you buy something, when they sell out of something, then this is the second jar. So then you get this shrimp paste or this crab paste. And now I can't go back. Now I can't cook without shrimp paste, and I can't cook without crab paste. But then really going way out of our comfort zone, working with fermented bean curd. Have you ever had fermented bean curd? So fermented bean curd is if you grew up Vietnamese, you probably had it just like spooned over rice. But it's really pungent, it's really powerful, it's really salty, it's just full of umami. We use it, and if I give it to any, white person, they're gonna be like, this is gross. But it's a main part of one of our vinaigrettes that everyone loves at the restaurant. And people ask me the recipe, and they're like, well, what's this fermented bean curd? And I'll go bring them a jar, and they're like, this is terrible. I'm like, yeah, but when you put it in the vinaigrette, it's awesome. And that kind of became the move. Same thing with our Som Tam salads. Our Som Tam salads, we went back, like, how do they make it? How do they make it in Thailand? How do they make it in Vietnam? So every order that you order at MoPho, it's made to order in a mortar and pestle. The vinaigrette is made by hand, pounding together garlic, pounding together dried Louisiana Gulf shrimp, pounding together Thai chilies, pounding together palm sugar, fish sauce, tamarind water, lime juice, every time to order. The difference is we don't just use green papaya. That's the green papaya salad that you get at every Thai restaurant. It's actually called Som Tam. And to do it properly, so what we do is our local farmers bring us whatever they have, and so that salad changes. Vinaigrette's always the same, everything in there is different, depending on the season. And so that's how we started to adapt. That's how it wasn't this sort of large Hadron Collider collision of two cuisines. It was how would I cook if I were a fifth generation Vietnamese American, or if I married one. How would I cook for them? If I had a Vietnamese wife, how would I cook for her? So that kind of became the driving force. And that was the story we decided to tell. And the more we did it, the more it started to make sense. New Orleans, South Louisiana was a French colony based on a river delta. So is Vietnam. French colony based on a river delta. Brackish water seafood. We're subtropical, they're tropical. But all of these things sort of flow together. And then cool things started to happen. So we became really good friends with the guys of Veggie Co-op. Veggie Farmers Cooperative is a bunch of young gentlemen at the Mary Queen of Vietnam Church in New Orleans East. And so what they do is, as an outreach, they train, or they have Vietnamese Americans who have moved here and can't really assimilate into the culture. They have them grow produce or make goods and then sell them to restaurants in the city. So all of our tofu, we sell somewhere around 300 pounds of tofu between the two restaurants a week. And all of it comes from one lady, Miss Lay. Miss To Lay is her name. And she's awesome. Go see her early in the morning. She makes fresh bean curd in this giant pot. You can go get it Saturday mornings at the Vietnamese farmers market in the west, out in the east. And it's the most delicious thing you've ever had. She puts her house-made caramel on it, and it's like this warm, she serves you this warm cup, and it's like cold in the morning, and you get this warm cup, and it's got this caramel on top. And these are things I never would have known if I would not have done the stupid idea of opening a Vietnamese restaurant as a white guy. I never would have learned these things. If I would have done Italian food, I'd already worked in Italy. If I would have done, if I would have done the German food, then I worked in Germany. That doesn't really, now I'm forced to do different things. I'm forced way outside my comfort zone, so I'm just following. It's almost like an addiction. It's like a self-induced addiction that got beat into me by my old boss. It's like you have to constantly be outside your comfort zone. Okay, cool, well, I'll just keep doing things that I shouldn't be doing. I don't know if that makes sense or not. And so, where do you go with that? And so, the scary part was when we first opened, we did meet a lot of pushback. There was a lot of things that got scary. People would come in, they're like, well, this isn't authentic, I don't want it, or, you have no business opening this restaurant. And we're like, look, we're not trying to steal anyone's culture. We're not trying to say that we're doing it right. I had a conversation with someone earlier. I'm not doing it the right way, I'm just doing it my way. I'm making it my own way. I don't know if it's right, I don't know if it's wrong. But slowly but surely, we had to think on the fly. We're still a business. And that's the number one thing to remember. We're still a business. And anything you do, it's for as fun as it sounds, or you find your calling, or you find your love. At the end of the day, you got to pay bills, even if it's not about money. Because, trust me, I now have an ex-wife because I was all about my career, and I made mistakes because I wanted to succeed. I wanted to have a restaurant. That's what I always wanted. So what do I do now? I don't know. But to win that game, we had to think on our feet. To win that game, we had to be able to change things on the fly. If someone wasn't ordering a dish, that dish changed. I stuck to my guns. I wanted this really traditional grilled short rib. I was getting the short ribs from a local farm, and we were just cooking them to where they still had some chew to them because that's how you're supposed to do it. And hell no. People were like, this is tough and gross, and we're not going to eat it. I'm like, but this is how they do it. I read a book. This is how it's supposed to be done. And they're like, no, you don't even know how to cook. This guy's an idiot. He's a sham, and walks out the door. And that happens. And so you're like, okay, well, that dish is off the menu, right? And so, the one thing I can say is that you've got to be willing to earn on your feet. You've got to be willing to pivot. If you're going to take great chances, if you're going to go where there's a void that needs to be filled, if you're going to go that direction, then you've got to be able to listen to your customer. You've got to be, especially in restaurants, especially in South Louisiana. Once again, you can get to the bruschetta argument all day long. Except now I'm doing it with someone who obviously knows the culture way better than I do, which means you have to kind of go even a little bit further. And then just to say one more part of that is, in the beginning, yeah, there was a scary part where MoPho wasn't paying its bills. We weren't making that rent. We weren't making those payments. So what did we do? We did side hustles. We popped up in a bar in Mid-City. We're really good at naming things. Our first place was called MoPho. Our second one was called Rum and the Lash. Because it was in an Irish pub, and we're Pogues fans, if anyone listens to the Pogues. And so we popped up at Rum and the Lash, and so we started doing pub grub. I don't know anything about pub grub either. I've always had fine dining. Thankfully for me, I'm sitting there going, dude, I don't know anything about pub grub, and I have a team full of white guys. And one of them is just like, oh, I know about pub grub. I'm like, cool, you're awesome. You're going to go over here now. And so he's now in charge of that, and he does a great job. And then we popped up in another little place, a cocktail lounge, where we started doing Italian food. And these are great things because we partner with these people. We don't have to put any skin in the game. All we do is pay rent, we pay our bills, we pay our labor, and we can make a little money. But it's a lot to go on, and sometimes you have to do that in the restaurant industry, especially if you're small and it's just you and two friends that put your money together to open a restaurant. We don't have some huge backer that's going to pull us out if we're in trouble. We have to go back to a bank and beg them for more money because we're three white guys that open an Asian restaurant. So that comes back to the bruschetta argument. So I finally go back and do the thing that everyone thought I was going to do originally, which is Italian food. I opened this little Italian pop-up. I opened the doors, and the first thing is a guy who went to my high school walks in and he goes, you don't have bruschetta on the menu? And I'm like, no, I do like the pasta that I learned when I was in northern Italy. It's all just like really fresh pasta. He's like, well, I'm not going. All right, well, why not? He's like, you don't have bruschetta. I'm like, I could make bruschetta, but I want to do like the things that I learned over in Italy. He's like, well, I'm not going. This is what dealing with New Orleans is like. I don't know if you've ever been there. This is like a normal conversation in New Orleans. So it's just, in a way that kind of like solidifies to me, like, oh God, I'm so glad I didn't do that. I'm so glad I went the way that wasn't expected. And now to finish it all off, where do I go from here? And we opened a new restaurant. We just opened it up. It's called Maypop. And Maypop is sort of the culmination in my mind, of all the things that I wanted to do. So at Maypop, I can geek out. I have a giant charcuterie case where we butcher hogs and put charcuterie up. I have a pasta extruder where I make all the pastas I want to do. So I have like the German, and then I have the Italian. And then we have the big mortar and pestles everywhere, and we're pounding curries all day. And it's a cool feeling to walk into a restaurant and you hear that noise of someone pounding a curry in a mortar and pestle. You're like, that's freaking great. And you see one of your cooks and he's hanging a fresh piece of salumi into a salumi case. And you go in the back and there's a guy extruding pasta. And then you have another cook who's hand pulling noodles. And you're like, this is fucking amazing. This is the coolest thing ever. Well, the problem is it's not really, keep in mind. I was having that conversation with someone else earlier. The more complicated your food gets, the tighter your margins get. So we're kind of smart that we did MoPho first. But I learned a lot of cool lessons. I did go way in the opposite direction, and I'm pretty sure that's why Kenny invited me here today, is because he's like, man, you did something that was quite possibly asinine. And so every decision can be a bad decision. Every decision carries the weight of being good or bad. It's all about the follow-through. It's all about the follow-through of showing up every day. When John Besh was sticking his down my throat every day, it was showing up every day. It was showing up every day when I had a restaurant that people were saying was insane and shouldn't be there. It's being there. It's being there and making decisions, positive decisions, because they can go either way. Every single one of them carries that possibility. And I don't know, it's exciting. I think that's all I got. So thanks for that.